New test options in Service Pack 12. The installation of Service Pack 12 onto our Blackboard system has provided us with some very handy new test options that will address some perennial issues with test options in Blackboard. If we edit the test options in the new system, we'll see what those are. First off, you can now decide to have your test description and test instructions displayed on the test begin screen that the student sees just before they start the test. That is optional, as controlled by these checkboxes here. The next change is Section 3, Test Availability Exceptions. You can now apply availability exceptions to one or more users or groups of users without creating a new test. You can select the users for the exemption from your course roster, and then you have the option to alter the number of attempts, the available time, whether or not auto submit and or forced completion are enforced, and availability dates for this particular student or students. This allows us to handle two very common types of testing issues without having to create a new test or utilize adaptive release any longer. For instance, in the case of a DSPS student, when you wish to grant that student more time, you can use this exemption to change the timer or the amount of time available on the test just for that student or group of students. And in cases where you wish to make a test available early or late for one or more students, you can simply change the availability dates under the exception here, again without having to use adaptive release. So those situations just got much easier to manage. Finally, it is now possible to automate changes in the display of feedback to students. This typically arises in a situation where you want the students to have perhaps just their score at the moment that they submit the test, so that you can release more information to them later on so they can study for their subsequent tests and the final exam. You're now given two rules that you can set, and those rules can be applied at different times. The first one can be applied after submission, or you can choose to give the student a one-time view of extended information, or you can have this happen on a specific date, after the availability date ends, or after all attempts are graded. And this all will happen automatically. The second rule can apply to specific date, after the due date, availability, and after attempts are graded. This setup here shows a typical application of this. The student here is given the score on the exam just after submitting the test, but after the due date, after which presumably no one will be able to take the test, the student is given all feedback, including a new option, which we did not have before, all answers. So the student will not only see the correct answer and the one that they chose, but the other possible answers as well. Between them, these two rules give you extensive flexibility in terms of what feedback you give to students and when, without you having to go back in and manually make the changes after the end of the testing period. As I intimated earlier, there are also some changes to the test begin screen that the student sees just before they start the test. Let's take a look and see what those look like. Optionally, the student may see on this screen now your test description and instructions. Some of these have not changed. The time test and timer setting notifications have not changed, but the force completion explanation has been changed very helpfully here. In this case, or in the case of this test, force completion is not set, and the message here clearly indicates that the student will not have longer than the amount of time you have specified to take the test, even if they do leave the test and come back in. That was not the case before, and there was a great deal of confusion about this setting. This allows you to not set force completion, as we recommend, so that the students can, if the student is kicked out of a test, they can immediately log back in and resume the test and presumably prevent you from having to reset the test attempt later on. This new explanation removes any possible misunderstanding on the student's part so that they know they can't resume the test at any time later that they wish. They must still finish it within the specified time limit. These new test options offer significant improvements in your ability to manage your testing in Blackboard.